You know, when you run a business, you think you have a handle on your costs, right? You add up the cost of materials, you factor in the labor, and that's it. Well, what if I told you that simple approach could be completely wrong? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a method called activity-based costing that shows you where the real money is going.
So, let's just jump right in with a question. Here we have two products, IT001 and IT002. Just looking at them, which one do you think truly costs more to produce? The answer might not be as obvious as you think.
All right, so if you just do the basic math, the answer seems pretty clear, doesn't it? Product IT002 needs more expensive materials and takes more labor. It clocks in at 115 baht, while IT001 is only 79. So, case closed, right? No way. This is actually where a ton of businesses stop, and believe me, it's a huge mistake.
To get to the real answer, we have to go deeper. We need to start looking at all those hidden factory costs, things you don't always think about, like running the machines, quality checks, even just the electricity bill. We call these overheads, and they are about to completely change our perspective.
Okay, so this is what we're working with. Our little case study here has 5 main background activities going on in the factory. The important thing to notice is that our two products, IT001 and IT002, use these things very, very differently. The whole challenge is to figure out, well, how do we split those bills fairly?
First, let's nail down a key term, an activity. And honestly, don't overthink it. This is just any task that costs money. It could be setting up a machine, or moving raw materials around, or doing a quality inspection. Each one is just a little piece of our cost puzzle.
Now, for every activity, there's something called a cost driver. Think of it as the cause and effect. What makes the electricity cost go up? Well, running the machines more. So machine hours is the cost driver for electricity. The more you do the driver, the higher the cost. It's that simple.
So, let's roll up our sleeves and get into the first real step. What we're about to do is find the price tag for every single one of these factory activities. This is how we start making sense of all those vague, messy overhead costs. And the process for this is beautifully simple. Seriously, you just take the total amount of money you spent on an activity, say setting up machines, then you look at the total number of setups you did across the whole factory. You just divide the total costs by the total driver. That's it.
And after you do that simple math for everything, you get this, a crystal clear price list for your factory. We can now see that every single time a machine is set up, it costs the company 2.25 baht. Every quality inspection costs exactly 120 baht. We've just turned a big blob of overhead costs into a detailed, itemized bill. Okay, so now we have our price list. The next logical step is to actually use it. We're going to take these rates we just calculated and start assigning those hidden costs to each product based on how much of each activity it really consumed. Let's see how this plays out for product I01. We look at its specific usage. For instance, we know it needed 200,000 hours on the machines. We just multiply that by our rate of $2.10 per hour, and we find that 420,000 baht of the machine cost belongs squarely to this product. We just do that for every single activity on the list. And when you add all of that up, bam, the total hidden cost, the overhead that product IT001 is truly responsible for, is a massive 705,900 baht. Think about that. This is a huge number that we were completely blind to before we started.
Now we just rinse and repeat for product IT002, but look closely at its usage numbers. It only needed 5,000 setups compared to 15,000 for the other one, and it only required 180 quality checks versus 320. It's clearly a much less demanding product to make.
And as a direct result of that, its total share of the overhead cost is way, way lower, only 354,100 baht. That's nearly half of what IT001 was responsible for. This is a critical piece of our puzzle.
We are so close. For our final step, we're going to take these big overhead numbers we just found, put them together with our original direct costs, and finally get the answer to the question we started with.
So if you remember, we started this whole thing thinking product IT02 was the expensive one. But now after all of this digging, it's time for the big reveal. Let's see the truth.
And here we have it, the whole story. Just look at that overhead line. That's the game changer. The hidden cost per unit for product IT001 is about 141 baht, but for IT002, it's a staggering 177 baht. That one factor completely flips the script. The true total cost of IT002 is 292.05 baht, way more than IT001. Our first guess was completely backward.
So what's the big deal? We did a bunch of math, we found a more accurate number. Why does this actually matter in the real world? Well, it matters because this kind of insight lets you make fundamentally better, smarter business decisions.
When you know your true costs, you can actually set your prices for real profitability, not just guesswork. It shines a spotlight on which of your products are secretly draining your resources, like our friend IT001 turned out to be. And it tells you exactly where your factory is spending the most cash, so you know exactly where to start if you want to become more efficient.
And that really brings us to the final question. Now that you have this data, this clarity, knowing for a fact which product costs more and exactly why, if this was your company, what would be the very first decision you would make? Would you change your prices? Would you try to sell more of one product? That's the real power of knowing the true cost.